So the next chapter in psychology is today. Quickly go and subscribe this channel first. So today's chapter is learning. The process of learning we will explain here. So learning is one of the most important psychological processes in human life. From childhood to adulthood, people constantly learn new behaviors, skills, ideas and knowledge. In psychology, learning is usually defined as a relatively permanent change in behavior or knowledge that happens because of experience and practice. So individuals adapt to their environments, solve problems and develop useful skills for daily life. So psychologists have studied learning for many years to understand how behavior changes. Famous psychologists such as Ivan Pavlov, Edward Thorndike and B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura developed important theories explaining how learning happens. So understanding the meaning of learning. The first visual introduces the basic idea of learning in a classroom. A teacher explains the concept while students listen carefully. The scene showing that learning often begins with instruction and explanation. So students start to understand that learning means gaining knowledge or changing behavior through the experience. In the next visual, we see the teacher explains how our brain responds to different stimuli. Students begin to understand that the mind connects experiences with responses. This prepares them to learn about conditioning and the other learning processes. Classical conditioning and association. The next few visuals focus on classical conditioning. In one scene, a scientist rings a bell before giving food to a dog. This experiment is related to the work of Ivan Pavlov. The dog slowly learns to associate the bell sound with food. Another visual shows the dog reacting to the bell sound by salivating even when food is not present. This demonstrates classical conditioning. The dog has learned to connect two different stimuli. A following scene shows the same principle in everyday life. For example, a child hears a school bell and immediately prepares to leave the classroom. Over time, the bell becomes a signal that triggers a response. Learning through rewards and punishments. So the next visual group of visuals show how consequences influence behavior. One scene shows a boy teaching a puppy to sit by giving it treats. When the puppy performs the correct action, it receives a reward. Another visual shows a student receiving a gold star after completing homework. This example demonstrates positive reinforcement, a concept strongly associated with B.F. Skinner. When behavior is rewarded, it becomes stronger and more frequent. Another scene shows a student who stops misbehaving after a teacher warns him. This demonstrates punishment. Punishment decreases unwanted behavior. Trial and error learning. The next visuals introduce trial and error learning. In one scene, a mouse runs through a maze, trying different paths until it finds cheese. This concept was studied by Edward Thorndike. At first, the mouse makes several mistakes. It enters wrong paths and turns around. After repeated attempts, the mouse remembers the correct path. Another visual shows a child trying to solve a puzzle. The child tries different pieces before finding the correct combination. The mistakes help the child understand which pieces do not fit. Trial and error learning shows that individuals learn by experimenting and gradually discovering the correct solution. Learning by observation. So learning can also occur through observation. One visual shows a younger child watching an older sibling ride a bicycle. So the younger child observes carefully and then tries to imitate the action. Another scene shows students watching their teacher demonstrate a science experiment. By observing the steps, the students learn how to perform the experiment themselves. These scenes represent observational learning, which was explained by Albert Bandura. According to Bandura, people learn new behaviors by watching others and copying their actions. So observational learning is very common in everyday life. Children often learn manners, language and habits by watching parents and teachers. Insight learning. Some visuals explain insight learning. In one scene, a chimpanzee suddenly uses a stick to reach bananas that are placed outside its cage. Instead of trying many random actions, the chimpanzee suddenly understands the solution. Another scene shows a student who suddenly understands a difficult math problem. A light bulb symbol appears above the student's head to represent the sudden idea. Insight learning shows that sometimes the brain quickly organizes information and produces a sudden solution. Practice and skill development. Practice plays a major role in learning. Several visuals shows students practicing different skills. One student practices writing letters repeatedly in a notebook. Another child practices basketball shots on a playground. At first, the child misses many shots, but gradually the accuracy improves. Another visual shows a student practicing piano every day. Through repetition, the student becomes more confident and skilled. So, these visuals demonstrate that learning becomes stronger when people repeat tasks regularly. Attention and concentration. Learning requires attention. One visual shows a student studying quietly in a peaceful environment, so the student is fully focused on the book. Another visual shows a noisy environment where the child is distracted by sounds and movement. Because of the distraction, learning becomes difficult. So these scenes show that attention helps the brain process and store information more effectively. Motivation and encouragement. Motivation and encouragement. Motivation is another important factor in learning. In one scene, a teacher praises a student for completing a difficult task. The praise increases the student's confidence and desire to learn more. Another visual shows parents helping their child with homework. Emotional support makes the child feel encouraged and safe while learning. Another scene shows a student writing study goals on a board. Setting clear goals help learners stay focused and organized. Motivation gives learners the energy and the determination to continue learning even when tasks become difficult. Learning through social interaction. Many visuals show learning through social interaction. In one scene, students work together to build a project model. Each student contributes ideas and together they find better solutions. Another scene shows a classroom discussion where students share opinions about a topic. Discussion allows learners to hear different viewpoints and expand their understanding. Another visual shows classmates helping each other study before an exam. Peer learning often makes difficult topics easier to understand. These scenes highlight the importance of cooperation and communication in the learning process. Learning through exploration and discovery. Exploration is another important method of learning. One visual shows a child exploring nature with a magnifying glass. The child observes insects and plants carefully. Another scene shows a child watching birds to understand their behavior. Through observation, the child learns about the nature world. Another visual shows a grandmother teaching a child how to cook. The child learns practical skills through real-life experience. These examples show that learning can occur outside classrooms through exploration and daily activities. Learning from mistakes. Mistakes are a normal part of learning. In one scene, a student practicing guitar makes mistakes while playing notes. Instead of giving up, the student continues practicing. Another visual shows a teacher explaining errors in his student's homework. The student learns the correct method and improves. Mistakes help learners understand what does not work, guiding them toward the correct solution. Persistence is essential for learning. One visual shows a child trying to solve a maze after many unsuccessful attempts. Eventually, the child finds the correct path. Another visual shows students participating in a puzzle competition. They analyze the problem carefully and work together to find the solution. These scenes teach that determination and patience are important qualities for successful learning. Reinforcement and positive habits. Several visuals show reinforcement systems in classrooms. A reward chart gives students stars for good behavior and completed assignments. These rewards encourage students to repeat positive actions. Another visual shows a teacher praising students for effort rather than only for correct answers. This type of encouragement builds confidence and promotes continuous improvement. Reinforcement helps learners develop positive habits and maintain motivation. Organizing and applying knowledge. As learners gain knowledge, they begin to organize it in meaningful ways. One visual shows a student drawing a mind map to connect different ideas. Another scene shows a student answering questions in a quiz using previously learned information. This demonstrates the application of knowledge. Learning becomes valuable when students can apply what they have learned in new situations. Achievement and sharing knowledge. The final visuals represent the result of successful learning. Students celebrate completing a project together. Their smiles show satisfaction and pride in their work. Another scene shows students presenting their project to the teacher and classmates. Sharing knowledge helps others learn and strengthen the understanding. These final scenes represent the completion of the learning process from gaining knowledge to applying and sharing it. So for the next session of psychology, please subscribe this channel.